Hello, my name is Bill Callahan, and you're here at the Callahan Connection. We're happy to be here today, and we have as our guest Attorney John E. McCluskey, who's going to talk a little bit about estate planning and wills. John has an office in Brockton and has been in practice a couple of years. How many years?
43.
43. Oh, so you have some experience in this. John does a lot of work in real estate and the estate planning. And happy to have you here today as our guest.
Thank you, Bill.
And we want to kind of touch on this because it's an area of real estate that a lot of people don't give enough attention to. So I'd like to start off with just kind of you highlighting the importance of having estate planning.
Well, Bill, first of all, estate planning is a term that a lot of people get nervous about. And it could be, and they really shouldn't, because everyone should have some type of an estate plan, whether it be a simple will, power of attorney, healthcare proxy. That's an estate plan. And oftentimes, if you don't have a will, your assets don't go where you'd probably think they were going to go. More and more today, people are getting a little more sophisticated with their estate planning, and everybody comes in and wants to talk about a trust. And a trust is basically a two-part function. You have a trustee and you have beneficiaries, or trustees, multiple trustees and multiple beneficiaries. And the trustee is holding the asset for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Many times people come in, especially as they get older, and are very concerned about protecting their assets and protecting their home from the nursing home. And many, many years ago, I started doing irrevocable trusts.
Correct. Yeah,
and
right.
They were always contested by the Division of Medical Assistance because they don't like trusts. If you go into the nursing home, they want to try to break that trust and make it a problem. I more and more got away from the irrevocable trust because they are just that, irrevocable. And once you get into it, it's pretty hard to get out. We used to be able to have, I'd call them back doors on the irrevocable trust, but over time those were eroded by the courts and the mass health people challenging those. So I don't do irrevocable trusts anymore. Typically I do a third-party trust. And what happens is that the people will come in and they'll want to talk about protecting their home. And if they're the trustees and they're the beneficiaries, it's not going to work for protecting the home. It's going to work for avoiding probate, that's for sure, but there are other ways to do that.
Outside of the person that's protecting the asset.
Yeah.
So
typically, we look for a family member, another family member. Often it's one of the children or a couple of the children, and they become the trustees. And so that when Mass Health comes along and they make the application if somebody's in the nursing home, they can't tell the elderly people to break the trust because they're not in charge.
there you go. So it's that person that's named as a trustee is in charge.
Right. So if you say to the child, and Mass Health has no right to say to the child, close down that trust. They just say no. And oftentimes the children will be the beneficiaries as well. So it's completely out of the parent's control, except for, I always like to have a life estate reserved for the benefit of the parent or parents.
Explain to the audience why, though.
Well,
what does the life estate do?
A life estate gives you the right to live in the home for the remainder of your life.
Parents, Bill Callahan stays in his house.
Yeah, Bill Callahan cannot get moved from that house. It's not subject to a petition to partition. It protects you pretty well.
So it makes the person, the couple, say Bill and Jane, comfortable living in that house.
Right.
That they're not going to get kicked out by an upset son or daughter.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
And that happens occasionally.
Yeah,
Thankfully,
right. In our world,
I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Very, very early on in my career, I saw that happen with a daughter who just went off the deep end.
Yeah.
And it worked out, but it was a problem.
Speak to the issue of, you talk about the trust protecting the assets. Talk about the look-back period, because that has changed over the years.
It has changed, and presently it's what we call a 5-year look-back period. What is that? It's really a window So if you give something away and you apply for benefits from Mass Health within 5 years, they look at what you gave away, and then they'll assess a penalty period based upon the value of what you gave away. So let's say, for example, if you gave away about $8,500 or so, the penalty period is a month of benefits. But if you apply for benefits within that 5-year period and you've given away a house, that's a problem, because now you take the value of the house, divide it, let's say it's 400,000, 500,000, and you divide it by the $8,500 or so. That number changes every year. You're going to have a huge penalty period
that you have to pay back.
Well, you're not going to get benefits.
Benefits.
Yeah.
Mass health benefits.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So
And it used to be 3 years, and now it's up to 5 years.
started at 30 months, then it went for 36 months, and then it went to 5 years. And once in a while, people come in and they say, "I hear it's now 10 years," and I go, "Oh no, I must have missed something."
10 years.
Yeah, and Obama, when he was in office, the rumor was he wanted to make it that you just couldn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the purpose is to protect what assets you have.
Right.
To pass down to
Right.
your your children.
If you have a child that lives with you and takes care of you, keeps you out of the nursing home, that's called a caregiver child.
Yeah.
So you can give to that child the home, just the home, and protect it at any time. There's no look back.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, there's no look back period. And of course, transfers to spouses, there's no look back period. So if you've got a sick spouse versus a healthy spouse, what I often do is I'll do a different type of a will for those people, that once in a while we see the healthy spouse dies while the sick spouse in the nursing home lives forever.
Yeah.
And so what I do is a will with a testamentary trust, and the assets are in the healthy spouse's name, and when that person passes, everything's protected.
So in a sense, you have two different wills, one for the wife, one for the husband?
I usually do the same.
Yeah.
Usually do the same. Of course, the one for the husband, he's the one in the nursing home, I guess, right?
Yeah.
They always go first.
The older guy, right.
The older guy, they always go first.
Yeah.
They don't last long. So, oftentimes we'll do just a simple reciprocal will. I give to you, you give to me. But when circumstances change and people's health changes, you have to look at it differently. I often talk about a case that I had several years ago, and the son called me up and he says, "Mom has stage 4 cancer. She's going to die any day. Dad's got dementia." Well, Mom was taking care of Dad in the home. We had previously done the wills with a testamentary trust. Within a couple of days, we got all the assets transferred to Mom. She passed. We probated her will, and then used the money for Dad because he was at home for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the minute he went to the nursing home, boom, all protected.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Some people think that the trust has other tax benefits. It doesn't. You don't avoid any tax like capital gains tax.
You don't avoid capital gains tax, but there are trusts that you do use for tax purposes.
Okay.
So Massachusetts has now a $2 million exemption, and you can take $2 million per person. So you might, if you have plenty of money, you set up these trusts where you put half the money in one spouse's name in trust, half the money in the other spouse's trust. Now you've protected $4 million.
So you're correct. You're staying below that threshold of
Right.
$2 million. Yeah. Oh, good planning.
That just went up in this year, retroactive to January 1, 2023, for people who passed.
So and that $2 million includes real estate, cash, investment money,
All assets.
everything, all
Yeah,
assets.
all
correct.
assets.
Yeah. It's funny when you started off the conversation. I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday, and he's not familiar with all the terms: power of attorney, will. I mean, obviously heard these terms, but people don't understand, and they are afraid of it because they don't know about it.
How it's going to work.
How it's going to work. Healthcare proxy.
Right.
There are terms that people don't really have a lot of knowledge about.
Right.
And until they get educated on it, I think that might be the fear of people coming to see you. Or
Yeah, when people come to see me, the first thing I do is listen to them. That's very important to understand what the situation
so
is.
you give better direction.
Yeah, and I always have them fill out a very simple form, basically telling me what the assets are, how they're held, what are the issues with the family. I remember once I was sitting with a family and they had 4 kids and one of them was living at home. So I said, so how long has Charlie had this problem? And they looked at me and they said, you know Charlie? I said, no, but I'm looking at this paper and I can tell there's a problem.
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
need to know that.
Yeah.
You need to know that because you don't want to put someone with a problem in charge of things.
Right.
And they.
And there's always, every family has dynamics.
Every
There's
family has dynamics.
certain
yeah.
dynamics, personalities, and
Yeah.
2 people get along. They don't get along with the third person, kind of a
Right.
thing. So
Right.
I'm sure you got to be especially careful on who is going to drive the bus, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I can sit there and in 5 minutes I'll know what they need.
But they might. Is it more than a visit? You don't finalize. You get them to explain everything to you. Then you've got to prepare the documents for
Right.
them to come back and review, read the documents, and
So
understand them.
I do just that. We figure out what's needed. Then we do the documents and we set up that day we set up a meeting for the next meeting.
Correct. Right.
And then they come back and usually I think it's very important. I always say to them, because they go home and they've forgotten to ask me something, or so I
Yeah.
said, now, what are your questions? And 50% of the time they have more questions.
Yeah.
And we're able to hash those out. And
Coming
then-
back the second visit, they got a lot of, yeah.
Then we hash those out and figure out how to respond to them. And if everything's right with the documents, we go over the documents. We sign them, witness them, notarize them. I scan them into my system.
Yeah,
We don't keep paper copies. And then they get the originals.
right.
And once in a while, someone will call up and say, hey, can you send me, can you email me my documents? I need to review them.
Yeah.
And we can do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have a problem with people coming back the second time and have a question. They said they talked to their butcher or their barber or their
Yeah, yeah.
because I get in real estate all the time. I was talking to so and so, and they told me I should.
Yeah.
They said, "How long have they been selling real estate?"
But
so you
have
must
to,
have it in that.
all the time. But you have to get it right. You want them to walk out the door
Yeah.
knowing
Yeah.
that they're satisfied.
I'm joking, but it's common that people will come in with an opinion that's not really true to the facts.
Yeah. I have a lot of repeat customers, and sometimes I don't see them for 15 years, 20 years.
Right.
And when they come back, I sit down with them and I say, you want a trust, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
go, yeah. I said, because your neighbor has a trust, right? Yeah, that's right.
Well, part of that is good because they tell people, have you done this yet? And you should do it.
Right.
So that's
Right.
good, planning ahead. 5 years is a long time if you're trying to protect your house and,
Oh, yeah.
and other assets, your investments.
I
and
tell
things.
people to at least check on it check on it if something changes,
Yeah.
circumstances change. 2, check on it every 5 years or so.
Right. Right.
And then, of course, I always give them their original documents, so if something happens to me, there's going to be somebody in the office that can pick up
Right.
and carry on with them, but they've got their original documents.
So talk about. I'm going to talk about that time period when we met last week to talk a little bit about in preparation for the show, and we were talking to that young lady, and we asked her, do you own a house? Yes, I own a house. Do you have children? Yes, I have children. Do you have a will? No, I don't have a will.
Right.
So when we're talking about planning, you really start this, maybe not the healthcare side, but getting a will and planning for the future is kind of important, especially if you own a house.
Yeah. I see a lot of single parents will come in and make sure that they have something set up because they know that if something happens to them, what's going to be in place for them. So I see a lot of that. I see mostly older folks.
Yeah.
But young couples, that's typically on the back burner. They don't want to spend any
Well,
money.
explain to the audience the downside if you own a house and you don't have a will. what happens?
Well, first of all, if a couple owns a house, typically they own it jointly. So if one dies, the other's going to own it.
Correct.
But once in a while, and I saw this not too long ago, the couple came in and the house was just in one person's name. And I said, you know, if you die without a will, your wife isn't necessarily, or your husband isn't going to necessarily be in total control here.
Right.
That surprises a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so the law doesn't really make it automatically go to the surviving spouse.
The Commonwealth gets involved, right?
Well, probate gets involved.
Probate gets involved.
Probate gets involved. If you've got minor children, that makes it more complicated because they're going to be entitled to something as well. And then you get into, you know, more complicated situations.
Can it force the sale of a house? Would a surviving spouse have to sell the house?
I have a case where the wife didn't do anything. She got sick and died of cancer. And unfortunately, she didn't have a will. The house was just in her name. Second marriage, minor child,
oh boy.
and 2 kids from a prior marriage. That's a mess.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a mess.
Wow.
And that takes a while to navigate through that.
Well, my own daughter was not married, meets a guy, the guy owns a house, they get married, she's living in a house, and he owns the house, has a mortgage. But I said, Mary, you have to change the deed now that you're married.
Right.
You know, if something happens,
Right.
you're out.
Not totally, but
Kinda.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you start with that. That's a simple thing. Come in and get a will done.
Right, but you don't just get a will done. You get a power of
the
attorney.
healthcare, correct?
You got to get a power of attorney because if something happens to you, you become disabled, you're going to end up in court with a guardianship.
Right.
And I have
So it's a spouse or again a child.
Yeah, I have a situation where the husband was in his 60s and he said, well, we don't need any of that stuff just yet. Smart guy, too. And he collapsed and has been in a coma ever since. Guardianship,
Wow.
it's just, not pretty.
Okay, and explain healthcare proxy to the audience.
So the healthcare proxy, if you can't make your own healthcare decisions,
Right.
I can remember back in the day, I started practicing before we had healthcare proxies, and we'd end up in the hospital room,
Oh, geez.
and some judge would be making decisions as to what the treatment was going to be, and that really, people were like, that's just not right. We have to have something. Many states have what they call a living will, but
Right.
Massachusetts has a proxy, and you actually appoint somebody to handle your medical affairs if you cannot do that yourself. And the doctor has to so-called invoke the proxy so that what I typically do is 9 times out of 10 it's going to be the other spouse is going to be the proxy, and then we have one of the kids as a backup or
Right.
somebody else as a backup.
Right.
But if they come to me and there's already a problem, sometimes we don't do that. If let's say a husband has Alzheimer's or something, you're not going to make him the proxy. You'd make the children or somebody else the proxy.
Are you ever a healthcare proxy or a trustee? Certainly, but
I was a healthcare proxy once
once.
because the person had nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, had nobody. And unfortunately, I had to make that decision
Wow.
to let the doctors called me and they said, this is a quality of life situation.
Yeah.
He's not going to get any better.
Wow.
And that's a hard decision
Oh,
to
boy.
make.
Yeah. Gee.
I called around to a couple of his friends and somebody that had been taking care of him, and I said, let's all see if we can be on the same page here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Geez, that's. So my wife and I we have all this taken care of. Obviously, you haven't.
Yeah.
But again, we've looked at it as the kids as our children got older.
Right.
10 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right.
We've changed all that paperwork
Absolutely.
over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you don't need someone to watch an 18-year-old kid, so to speak, or a 21-year-old,
Right.
really.
Right.
Now they're of age, and
And your kids would typically want to be involved in making
correct,
decisions for
correct,
you. Yeah.
right. That's what I was getting
Yeah.
at. Yes.
Yeah, and if you have a third person, well, and if there's kids involved, that third person is going to jump in and ask the family what they want.
So we're talking about consulting qualified attorney. And you've talked a little bit about your first meeting with people. How do people find you? How do they know? Just word of mouth, or you
Usually referrals. Yeah.
referrals? Right.
Yeah. And I get a lot of lawyers calling me and saying, "Can you handle this for these people?"
Yeah.
Because it's I wouldn't handle a criminal case.
Yeah.
I wouldn't handle a divorce because I just don't do that. And I do a lot of this stuff, so it's that's lawyers. Making a good referral is very important.
That's where I was kind of going with this,
Yeah.
because some people say, I'm going to get a lawyer. Well, you need a lawyer specific to the issue that's
Right.
facing you.
Right.
Estate planning, maybe it's a litigation of some sort.
Right.
You want to get a person that's in the courtroom.
That's right. Yeah.
And you learn that over time, I guess. You really
Yeah.
don't want to be in a courtroom.
I don't want to be in a courtroom. I don't like some young judge telling me what to do.
So we go through this over the years, and do you have to get any kind of financial help, like insurance guys involved, or financial planners involved with what's going on when you do this, or that's up to the client?
Yeah, I often ask them, do they have a financial advisor? And I would always encourage them to stick with that person. But if they don't, I'll give them a couple of recommendations. And over time, I've made sure that the recommendations that I've made, people will call me up and say thank you.
Yeah.
That's the right person for me, and appreciate
Good.
what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important to go to the people that know what they're doing and will treat you right.
And things change. You talked about going from 30 months to 36 months to 5 years. How do you keep up with all the changes?
I go to seminars from time to time. I'll read periodicals. I get stuff from I belong to the Massachusetts chapter, National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys.
Oh, okay. So there's
Yeah.
a specific
Yeah.
group or association.
Yeah, and it's nationwide. So we get a book, and people will call me. A neighbor of mine called me last week and said, my mother's out in Michigan, and she had a stroke. What do? I sent her the list of all of the lawyers in Michigan.
Yeah, right.
And so she was able to, latch on to somebody.
Well, think of all the people that go to Florida,
Right.
and they might be living in Florida for 6 or 7 months,
Yeah.
or I guess that would make them a resident of Florida, but.
You have to elect to be a resident. Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Do you get much of that, where people are down there, your clients are down in Florida?
Yeah, what I get is, I'm leaving for Florida next week. Can you do my will for me? Okay.
You don't have anything going on.
That's right.
No, we talked about that. Your day is busy because people, looking for your time, trying to get in and schedule an appointment to
Right.
get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had 5 appointments on President's Day.
On President's Day.
Yeah.
You don't no rest for the weary.
Not a rest for the weary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is good. This is good information. I'm hoping our audience really takes this to heart and contacts you or any real estate lawyer that's specifically educated in this what do you call it, elder law?
Yeah.
Elderly law. And you don't really have to be elderly.
My father used to look at me and he goes, "What do you do?"
Well, he was a doctor. I'm sure he probably wondered what you're going to do with the elderly. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today here at the Callahan Connection.
Pleasure.
Our
right.
guest today is Attorney John E. McCluskey, 1325 Belmont Street in Brockton, right on the west side, right near Route 24, 123. And he works on holidays. Actually, he's working Saturday and Sunday oftentimes too. But give him a call and take the time to prepare a will, power of attorney,
Yep.
trust, healthcare proxy, all very, very important. Very, very important. thank you for being here today. Thank you. Thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you, Bill, for having me.
Okay.
Yep.
Welcome back to the Callahan Connection. Just want to make a quick introduction here to the business in Bridgewater. And we're going to have a nice little meeting here with Nick Falconieri at the Crispy's Restaurant right over here on Broad Street next to the railroad tracks. Open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He made a great meal for us. Watch this next episode. Okay, here we are, Callahan Connection. And this is Business in Bridgewater. And our host here, my guest, is Nick Crispy. And he's prepared some wonderful things here. Why don't you tell us what we have here, Nick, and go through them quick and we'll talk about our restaurant.
All right, perfect. So today we got our 2-day brined and then baked and then fried to order wings. They are in our garlic parm sauce. We do a variety of other sauces here, handmade, regular that we buy.
And I've had them, so they're
delicious.
delicious.
Those are delicious. Those one of his favorite things.
Yeah.
Then we have our homemade meatballs, which is a veal, pork, and beef blend that we hand roll with spices and vegetables, and we cook them in some oil, and you get a perfect meatball every single time. That's one of our making 250
those too.
250 meatballs a week. It's by hand. Wow. It's kind of crazy.
Wow.
And then our best seller is our hand-cut chicken parm. My dad, one of the best chicken cutters in the world.
Yeah.
He's cutting 100 pounds of chicken every single week by hand, pounding it all out, and we dress them up and make them look nice. So
very generous portion.
It's a 12-ounce piece of chicken every single time. We don't try to shy away from the portions here. Look at me.
Yeah, and you're out. You're Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 5 to whenever the.
Yeah.
Whenever it starts a little dying down a little, I'll shut the doors. But I gotta. The times now, it's tough. It's tough on everyone. Not just.
You work very hard here, and we've been here. My wife and I, and one of her favorites is that antipasta.
People love the antipasta.
So,
I love the
you're
antipasta
doing a
myself.
great job here, and we want to kind of get people to come back down to Crispy's.
Oh, we appreciate
Wednesday,
that.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This is Nick. Ask for Nick, and he's great to come out and talk with you, tell you all about what he's offering that night.
As long as I'm not busy, it gets a little hectic sometimes.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm always willing to talk to anyone who likes my food.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming, guys.